Plan Commission meeting of Tuesday, January 12, 2016. Roll call.
Dickman here.
Johnston here.
Scafidi here.
Guzikowski here.
Corral here.
Seifert here.
Chandler here.
All right. Item 2 is minutes of the December 8th, 2015 meeting.
Dickman makes a motion and we approve the minutes of the December 8th, 2015 meeting.
Seifert seconds.
Seifert seconds. Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Scafidi, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Corral abstains.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
All right. Item 3 is significant common council actions. Carrie.
Council approved a number of actions on December 15th, including an ordinance rezoning the property at, I believe that's supposed to be 1980 West Rawson Avenue, from RS4 single-family residential to RM1 multifamily residential with a conditional use for a licensed elderly community living arrangement. Also approved an ordinance amending another ordinance for a conditional use to allow inflammable gas and liquid storage in excess of 5,000 gallons on the property at 6970 South 6th Street. Also approved a resolution accepting a quitclaim deed from Wis Park for the conservation area at Oakview Business Park. Approved a resolution accepting a quitclaim deed for the Emerald Preserve Park and the Dale Richards Trail and the Drexel Town Square at Drexel Town Square. An ordinance amending the comprehensive plan for the city of Oak Creek affecting the properties along Drexel Avenue, Rawson Avenue, and South 20th Street. And on January 5th, the Common Council approved an ordinance amending the comprehensive plan for properties at 7502, 7512, and 7518 South Howell Avenue, and held action on an ordinance for an amendment to the comprehensive plan affecting properties at 7721 South Pennsylvania, 2100, 2200, and 2280 East Drexel Avenue. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Item 4 is a sign appeal hearing. It's a public hearing on a proposed sign for the property at 320 West Town Square Way, submitted by PetSmart, that would allow PetSmart to install a total of 3 wall signs, 2 wall signs on the west and 1 wall sign on the east elevations of the building. The tax key number is 813-9048. Pete.
Thank you. Read the public hearing into the record. City of Oak Creek notice a public hearing before the Plan Commission. Public hearing for a sign appeal will be held Tuesday, January 12, 2016 at 6 p.m. Located at the Oak Creek City Hall Common Council Chambers at 8040 South 6th Street, Oak Creek, Wisconsin, 53154. The appellant is Steve Ignarski for PetSmart, tax key number 813-9048. Property is located at 320 West Town Square Way, requesting a variance from section 17.0334, Appendix B, Section B, quantity of the Drexel Town Square Mixed-Use Development District General Development and Regulating Plan, which states, quote, 1 primary sign per entry facade per tenant is allowed. If granted, the variance would allow PetSmart to install 2 wall signs on the west elevation and 1 wall sign on the east elevation of the building. Property is zoned DTS MUPDD, Drexel Town Square Mixed Use Plan Development District. All interested persons wishing to be heard are invited to be present. Dated this 23rd day of December 2015. Plan Commission, City of Oak Creek, Wisconsin. Mayor Steve Scafidi, Chairman. This is a public hearing, and people who wish to address the commission on this can please approach the podium, state your name and address. The mayor will have this public hearing open.
I'll make 3 calls for public comment. If you are a resident or citizen, or non-resident for that matter, if you could fill out a public comment form that are located in that back rack. This is the first call for public comment on item 4A. Second call. Third and final call on item 4A, which is a public hearing on a proposed sign appeal for the property at 320 West Town Square Way. I'll now close the public hearing. We'll move on to 5A, new business. It's a sign appeal request for the property at 320 West Town Square Way, submitted by PetSmart, that would allow PetSmart to install a total of 3 wall signs, 2 wall signs on the west and 1 wall sign on the east elevations of the building. Tax key number 813-9048. You can see up on your screen. I'll open it up to the commission. Commissioner Dickman.
I guess this is more for you, Pete. In the information that they provided us with on the signs, they list the square footage example 102.36, and you say approximately 124, then it goes 12.35, and we say 22. And it's the same type thing for the third sign. Now, is that because they measure it different than we do, or why is
That-
it different?
Yes, that would be correct. The applicant measured very around the perimeter of the sign where we calculate measurements by the smallest regular polygon. So we do a rectangle, so there's dead space in between where the bouncing ball is above PetSmart. We actually take the lowest point of the sign, which is the T, and go all the way to the top of the bouncing ball arc, and that's where the height is. They calculated from the bottom of the P to the top of the P, moved it inward to where the arc went up, kind of just imagine just a drawing right around all the elements, and that's why their number was smaller than our number.
Okay, there is no standard in the industry that, how we're doing it versus how they're doing it?
Each community does it differently. Some communities will actually let you put a box around each individual element, so the P, the E, the T, and they would actually just give you the exact square footage of that. Some do where you can just do the perimeter of the element, or in the case we do, which other communities do as well, is the smallest regular polygon.
Okay, now, their drawings, those, do show the smaller number of square feet, and this goes into our records. Should it actually be the same as what we're saying it is or not? For our records, that's all.
Well, in this particular case, it doesn't matter because they're within the size parameters. I just wanted to inform the commission that, this would be what we would consider the sign size if it were a sign permit being issued. Tonight's variance is basically not asking size issue. The issue tonight is
the number.
quantity.
Yeah.
Should they have 3? Should they only be allowed 2?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dickman. Just a reminder, technology for the commission. Once you're done speaking, if you shut your microphone down, I can actually see the sequence of people that are asking to speak on the item. So next up is Commissioner Chandler and then Commissioner Seifert.
Who wants to go off?
Okay, I have a question about the locations and the quantities. So we reviewed the quantities, it's a total of 3. So it's the 2 PetSmart signs and then the grooming sign. Can you just show where these 3 signs will reside?
Sure. On the graphic, I believe you have the graphic of the building in front of you right now. There's the PetSmart that's above, to the left of your screen of the building, and then the grooming, smaller one to the right. And then on the other side of the building, on the east elevation, there is a smaller PetSmart sign that's going to be displayed. And for this particular sign appeal, the way the code is written, you're allowed to have 1 wall sign per entry facade. You're also allowed a wall sign if you have a special elevation, which basically is you have a 3-side. In this case, you have that side facing the other road. So they're allowed to have that wall sign on the east elevation. They're allowed to have a wall sign on the west. They want a 3rd one. And so, you have 2 PetSmarts and 1 grooming. Now, grooming is a service, not necessarily a brand, but that is up to this commission if how many you want to allow. If they want to put only, grooming on one side and put PetSmart on the other, or if they want to put PetSmart, that's up to them. But right now, we just want to have you decide whether or not 3 signs are appropriate, 2 specifically on the west elevation, which is their entrance.
So is the applicant here to give a little more information about the additional sign?
You can come forward, just give your name and address for the record.
Chris Roble, 585 Bond Street, Lincolnshire, Kiefer Signs. Yes, basically PetSmart is looking to add the additional grooming sign to their building. It is a service, it is one of their services that they do provide. So it's one of their ways that they're able to actually promote that service.
And is this similar to the PetSmart that is on, is that
Petco?
how?
Petco?
Petco.
Right. They just have the one Petco sign.
Okay, thank you.
Facing east. For the recording, let's let the record reflect that Alderman Bekavich has joined us. Thank you for being here. I'm not making a comment on your lateness. I just want to show that they're here. I know you did. Thank you. Any other questions or from the commission? Alderman Bekavich.
Just a comment going back to PetSmart. They did ask for that grooming sign, and if I remember, we denied, didn't we?
For Petco?
I'm getting them.
Yeah.
Petco.
Yes, Petco. I was looking in the records to see if they did go for a sign appeal. I think they spoke with staff and they chose not to. They were looking for an extra large sign, if you recall. I believe their sign was like 350 square feet or something like that. And so, so instead of pursuing a super size sign and an additional wall sign, they just pursued going for the extra large sign on the east elevation. So there wasn't a sign appeal for the grooming sign, but they did talk about wanting to have grooming above it, and then they were looking at either putting decals or grooming advertisements on the glass in that section where they do grooming there.
I'm just a little worried that if we do one, we'll have to do the other. And I'm sorry, Pete, what was the square footage of just the grooming sign? What's the
It's
additional?
actually 12.35 square feet.
Okay, that's it, thank you.
Commissioner Siebert.
Yeah, I have a question for the planning department. It seems like every new building that's coming into Drexel Town Square wants more than one or two signs. They want 3 or 4. And I'm wondering, are we going to really take a look at that and evaluate it? It seems like, here's another example. It's 3 sides, 4 sides. I think we should take a look at Drexel Town Square and try to come up with some type of standard.
Well, we do have a standard, and I know Wally's brought it up time and time again about our sign code, and it seems like everybody wants more signs. And staff's position is, we limit the number of signs, but there will always be cases in which additional signage may be warranted, may be fitting if a business is a four-sided architecture. To allow only one wall sign doesn't seem to be very fair. So in the Drexel Town Square plan, we talked about one entrance per facade. So if you wanted to have more wall signs, have more entrances to your business. If you want, I know in the location of PetSmart here, they're facing an additional road. So we created that special elevation component so they could build one on each side of the building. So we have taken a look at that and we have considered it, but anytime there is something additional that we can't think of every single sign combination that a business has when they come forward. Going back, if you recall Burger King, they had all these little different kind of signages that the commission, if I recall correctly, thought was it was fitting for that business and it was acceptable. That's why we want to keep the standards as they are. So this commission has the ability to say, hey, you know what, in this particular case, it is warranted to have that extra sign and have that extra oversight, have that opportunity to talk to a business and say, what it is are you proposing? Do you want 2 100 square foot signs? Do you want one 12 square foot sign and one 50? Let's talk. Let's bring it here for discussion. And that's why we haven't changed the sign code, because we felt we do have flexibility. It may mean an extra meeting, but this way we do have an opportunity to just have the discussion before the commission, before it gets built. Otherwise, it'd be done at staff level, and one day it'd be like, what, we allowed 5 wall signs? Why did we do that? Well, because we were tired of getting sign appeals. Well, no, that's not really the great rationale as to why not to have it. So I hear what you're saying, but it does provide an opportunity for the city, this commission, to determine whether or not additional signage is warranted or not on a case-by-case situation.
And I think Drexel Town Square will offer some unique challenges. We're going to have some buildings with significant elevation. We have some incredibly curved roads that go through there, so you're not going to just have one easy, logical choice where you'd want to have your sign with the most visibility. There's going to be multiple choices where people are going to pass by your building, so I think that's where some of this is coming from. For me, as a member of the Plan Commission, it's always been, how does it look on the building? Does it fit? Does it make sense? Is it attractive? I think the decisions we've made in the past reflect that. We've, as Pete brought up, the Burger King example, it actually ended up with a terrific result. It looks very nice, and I think that's an example of how it can work. So I think we always have to be thinking about that. Certainly standards matter, and we do have a standard for Drexel Town Square, but there will be times when we'll deviate from it. Commissioner Carrillo.
I have a quick question for Pete. This You mentioned something about the advertising on the window of the other pet company. We limit advertising and placement of, for instance, services on windows, correct?
Yes, in Drexel Town Square, yes.
Okay, so it would be not permitted if we don't grant this and don't let them put that service on the side of the building, it would not also be able to be put on the windows.
Go ahead, Carrie.
I believe that what we would be talking about is there's a limitation to how much of a window can contain a sign or something like that. If there would be something like vinyl lettering that would be applied to the sign, it would be able to take up no more than 25% of the wall, or I'm sorry, the window panel, that individual window panel that it would be on. But no more illuminated signage would be allowed in the window.
Okay, so if we don't grant this, they would still have that opportunity to put it on the window.
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Correll.
So the total, we've got like 210 square total between the three signs, if we go with all three. And they're entitled to 100 and 100.
Within the Drexeltown Square General Development Plan Regulating Plan, there are differences between what's allowed in terms of square footage and height than what is allowed by regular code, and that's specific to this particular zoning district. So the 100 square foot rule is not necessarily within DTS because that's some of the flexibility. And in this case, it was, the height of the sign is specified in DTS MUPDD. So therefore, the letters are, I believe it's a maximum of 15% of the maximum floor height. So that's how we got to this signage here.
I agree with the mayor. I mean, it looks good. I have some concerns along the other commissioners that the total signage and the total package, I mean, there's great visibility, they're great pieces of real estate, they're gonna know you're there. I think we just have to be cautious of how far we go with some of this signage. I still go back to the rest of the city where I think Oak Creek is extremely flexible in signage compared to a lot of municipalities, and we allow quite a bit of signage. This third sign is quite small. Commissioner Carrillo's question, if they go with this grooming, are we going to end up with some other type of a service sign in the windows in addition to that? Now we're really going overboard. So my question would be, they're not restricted in the windows once we permit this third sign. And that gives me some concern.
No, they would be restricted, and we would have to take a look at what would be proposed, but there would be restrictions on what could be placed in the windows. I wouldn't be able to answer that question specifically offhand without seeing a plan and having the regulating plan in front of me, because there are regulations in terms of how much the window can be covered. There are also regulations for clear glazing in DTS that makes this very unique. So I would have to kind of defer my answer there, but we wouldn't be allowing every single service in all of the windows. It just wouldn't be allowed.
But they could potentially have some window signage.
I would have to look at the plan before I could answer that question.
All right, that part does concern me a little bit. Thank you.
Alderman Guzikowski.
I guess I'm kind of mixed here. On one hand, we have the need for the additional sign. Are we setting a precedence here as we start setting up the setting the table for the rest of Drexeltown Square? On the flip side, I do agree that the size is acceptable, and I do agree with Commissioner Correll that everyone's going to know that you're there. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm kind of torn on this particular issue, and not really particular to PetSmart, but as the whole development rolls out is where my conviction is right now. So.
May I add
Go ahead.
something? A couple things. Mr. Mayor, you mentioned that, putting some window signage, and there's a lot of different curves through
Excuse
the
me,
streets, and there's a lot of different views.
Does he need his name?
Already have it.
What we're concerned about is because the grooming service is not widely known, is that while you're driving through the streets, if you have a small window, I mean, if you look at the drawing, the height of one of the windows is, 8 feet by maybe 3 feet long. If you have, per the code, you're only allowed to have, 25% of the window covered. And if you're driving down the street and you're straining your neck, trying to see if there's services that is provided, it might be difficult to see. By having a wall sign that is very neat, the building is not standard. I mean, as you can see, it's already kind of offset. Having that additional sign, would allow their customers, pet parents, to be able to identify not only PetSmart, but the service of grooming that they do have.
Given the size of the elevation, the length of the elevation, the signage that you're proposing, the one that I see in front of me, seems to make a lot of sense. Commissioner Dickman?
I kind of agree with you, Steve. I did have a concern with, that they could put a sign in the window, but when I look at the size of it, the way we measure it, it's 22 square feet versus the large PetSmart sign of 124. And if you look at the length of the building, it's 118 feet at this side of the building. It really doesn't take up that much space, and I personally am for it.
It's also letting someone know in our community, residents in particular, that there's a particular service that they're going to use there. So I think that's also has some benefit. Alderman Bekavich.
On second look, after the mayor talked about how it looked and Pat talked about it, the sign really does balance out the building somewhat. After listening to the conversation on the windows, I don't believe that would be feasible and make any sense to put signage in the window. So, again, I think given the challenges at Drexeltown Square, we're going to have to look at most of these businesses almost on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the commission? Motion on 5A.
Kavich will make a motion that the Plan Commission recommend to the Common Council to approve the sign appeal for the property at 320 West Drexeltown Square Way submitted by PetSmart, which would allow PetSmart to install a total of 3 signs, 2 wall signs on the west and 1 on the east elevation buildings, with the square footage not to exceed.
All right, hold on one second. Pete?
I just want to make this, the Plan Commission grants the variance. This is not a recommendation to the Common Council. So the very last paragraph on the report would be a good parameter which to grant the variance, that the Plan Commission can make a motion to grant the variance allowing 2 wall signs on the west elevation and 1 wall sign on the east elevation of the building located at 320 West Town Square Way. Tonight, we're looking at the numbers, not the sizes or anything like that, because what they're proposing size-wise does meet the design standards. It is just the quantity.
Okay, then I will make the motion that the Plan Commission motions to grant the variance to allow 2 wall signs on the west elevation and 1 sign on the east elevation at the building located at 320 East Town Square Way.
Okay, Dickman will second.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Speedy, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, no.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to 5B. It's a review of conditions and restrictions for a restaurant building with drive-through facility submitted by Drexel Partners LLC on the property located at 600 West Drexel Avenue, tax key number 782-9000-000. Pete? Carrie? Carrie?
We are talking about the property that is on the corner of 6th and Drexel, is located on the map here in red. As you'll recall, on December 8th, the Plan Commission approved a rezone, they recommended approval to the Common Council, a rezone of the property from M1 to B2, and also a conditional use to allow a restaurant with drive-through facility on this property. And if you'll recall, this is the proposed layout for that property, and if I zoom in a little bit, you can get a better idea of what the preliminary plan would show for the 2-tenant building. What I would like to draw your attention to are several sections of the proposed conditions and restrictions. I'd like to just highlight a couple of them first and then draw your attention back to a couple of items to have a further discussion about. First section is on page 2 of 9, which is section 3A. This is regarding minimum parking stalls. The plans show 32 parking stalls for the two-tenant building. This section is recognizing the 32 stalls that are being proposed and saying that any other parking and access requirements other than the 32 stalls shown would have to abide by the code requirements. If we go to page 4 of 9, section 5B, C, and D are regarding landscaping. Now, these are different landscaping requirements for the property. What I would like to say here, though, is that we would have to come back to this for a discussion. I just wanted to highlight it because that is what we would like to talk about once I go through the rest of these. If we go to page 7 of 9, that's building and parking setbacks. That's just noted, putting everybody on notice about what the requirements are. Also highlighted is a note that this is a corner lot, so it's kind of a special condition lot. Finally, if we go to page 8 of 9, section 9 is under signs, just says that we have to provide, or we have to conform to the provisions of the code for signage. Under 10, permitted uses is recognizing that the request is for one restaurant with a drive-through facility as part of a multi-tenant building. And section 11, which is time of compliance. Now, this time of compliance section is drawn directly from the code, which says that the operator shall commence operations in accordance with the conditions and restrictions within 12 months of the date of adoption. So if this goes to council and is adopted, there would be 12 months to start construction. And then the conditional use would expire within 12 months after the date of adoption if a building permit has not been issued for the use. And that may draw some discussion as well. Now, if we go back to the parking and access, this is an area that the applicant and I have been having a discussion about. And if you'll recall from the staff report that talked about the original request at the last meeting, we have a two-tenant building. One is a restaurant with drive-through facility, and then the other one was kind of a general commercial tenant space. We have a little bit more information about what the potential tenant space would be there, and it's more suited to kind of an office, professional services, medical kind of area, which has a different parking requirement than straight-up commercial. So I would like to invite the applicant to come up and have a little discussion about the parking and also landscaping. I will just say, however, that the 5M allows the Plan Commission to modify standards for landscaping, at which time I think would be more appropriate to discuss those things at site plan review, but it is in the conditions and restrictions that the Plan Commission has the authority to modify the landscaping requirements during the next review.
Is the applicant here? Name and address for the record.
7116 West Wells, Wauwatosa. Say again? Yes. Okay, 7116 West Wells, Wauwatosa, again, Jason Luther. So as Carrie mentioned, we're proposing a two-tenant project. We're here just for the conditional use to allow the drive-through for the restaurant tenant. Addressing, I guess, the parking first and the tenant uses. The restaurant is really less about serving food per se. It's really going to be heavily focused on the drive-through. Roughly 50% I think of their customers will come through the drive-through. The other side of the space is more like a physical therapy or therapy space. We feel, and I think they feel, that both uses are very complementary to each other from an hours and operations, peak time. We feel that the parking is adequate, and both users support the number of parking stalls that are there. I think they're both reputable tenants, and they wouldn't choose this location if they felt it was underparked.
Okay. Alderman Kavitz?
Given the challenges on the lot and the building proposed with this drive-through and the type of business that we see, I really don't have a lot of problems with parking, to take that into consideration first. Again, it's a challenged lot. It's actually, I want to call it a brownfield lot, but it's not a very
attractive.
Thank you. A very attractive site right now, so I see it as an improvement. Again, you can picture some businesses where we do have multi-tenant buildings, and you look at the number of spaces, and I'll just use the Panera strip mall, for example. Panera's in there. and
Excuse me, Alderman Bukavich, you
Yes.
keep cutting out. If you could bring the
Oh.
mic closer to you.
Sorry about that. But if you take some other multi-tenant buildings too, I think the parking is considered shared, and you got to look at the peak times that they're going to be used. So I myself do not have any problems with 32 spaces. And again, the drive-through, I guess the biggest thing is control the flow of traffic, because Drexel Avenue is busy and is going to increase with traffic flow there. So we have to be mindful of that.
Yeah, it looks, just looking at the map you have up on here, it looks like the traffic flows in a great way for the size of the site, so that looks like they've taken that into consideration. Commissioner Dickman.
I do agree with the comments made so far by both the gentlemen. I did want to make sure that because of the limited space here, there will be no outside dining. Is that correct? You're going to mostly be drive-through and inside?
There's a small patio, you can probably note it
Okay.
just to the southwest.
Well, this is a preliminary drawing. It's
Correct.
not firm. I just want to...
Sure, and we're not here for site plan approval at this point either, but the restaurant user would like to have a small outside
A small...
patio area.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Motion.
If
Hold on one second. You wanted to talk about landscaping.
landscaping,
All right.
and what I
And
wanted...
you brought it up, so you must have something you want to say.
Well, we had been talking about landscaping and the challenges with this site, and even though this is not site plan review, we had discussed what options are available. Rather than getting into a lengthy discussion, because again, this is not site plan review, I just want to draw your attention to, again, 5M on page 6 of 9 that says the Plan Commission may modify those standards for landscaping by a 3/4 majority vote of commissioners present. So at site plan review, if we talk about landscaping at that time, if there are any adjustments to the modifications to the requirements that are in B, C, and D, we would do it at site plan review. Plan Commission does have authority to do it at that time. It's just making that clear.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about on that?
I think our concern was related mostly to, on page 4 of 9, 5D, and the minimum 3-foot landscaped area between the edge of the pavement and the entrance elevation of the building. Because of the size of the lot, it's very challenging in order to have that landscaping buffer there. As you can see from our plan, we don't have something, but we would be more than willing to put planter boxes or something to help soften that image in the front.
Yeah, and you can see the site challenges, so, and, whatever you can do to enhance that, I think is going to be beneficial, and there's no doubt that you will. Commissioner Dickman, you have another comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. No,
Commissioner Corral?
I guess I was looking to see where our concerns may be on the landscaping, or is it the 30% issue, or just the setback, as he mentioned?
No, it's the minimum requirement for a 3-foot landscape area, but again, those are discussions that we can have during site plan review when we have more of a detailed and finalized plan. Also, landscaping plans that would be submitted as part of that review. But again, Section M allows the Plan Commission at site plan review to make any modifications to the landscaping requirements.
I get that. My question related, general question for the applicant was, we are relatively strict in my however many years up here in the 30%, and I wondered if that was a concern so that everyone was aware of that.
No.
Thank you.
Applicant shakes his head no. Any other questions? Motion.
Bukavich will make a motion that the Plan Commission recommend to the Common Council adopt the conditions and restrictions as part of the conditional use permit, allowing a restaurant with a drive-through facility on the property at 600 West Drexel Avenue after a public hearing.
Guzekowski will second.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnston, aye. Bukavich, aye.
Scavidi, aye.
Guzekowski.
Corral, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Thank you. 5C is a sign building plan review, proposed sign plan submitted by Steve Ignarski, Prairie Sign and Lighting LLC for the Mattress Firm retail portion of the property located at 320 West Town Square Way, tax key number 813-9048. Carrie?
So this is the other half of the building that we were talking about for the sign appeal in A. And the two signs that we are looking at here are on the west elevation for the retail portion, the mattress firm portion, as well as the north elevation. And this is the proposal for the west elevation, just showing you the size and where it would be located on the building. This is actually the item for discussion. The request is to have a sign on the north elevation, also showing the removal of a decorative element that was discussed at the Plan Commission review of the original plans on April 28th. So I just wanted to talk about that a little bit because this is the request. And staff's opinion is that the original plans showed a wall sign on the north or on the west elevation and on the east elevation. And there were a lot of discussions regarding the design of the building as well as these elements that are on the north side. So modifying the building to accommodate the wall sign on the north elevation is actually contrary to what the approved plans were in April. And another note is that this sign is actually out of scale with the portion of the building facade and obscures the brick reveal. So the recommendation would be to maintain the improved building design and sign locations from April 28th. But if the Plan Commission determines that a wall sign on the north elevation is acceptable, then staff recommends scaling the sign to fit proportionally on the stucco or the northwest portion of the building and removing the wall sign on the east elevation, both of which are scenarios for the Plan Commission's consideration in the conditions of approval. And if anybody has any concern about how the approved plans looked, this was the elevation for the west that was proposed. And then the elevation showing the north and east. So the staff recommendation is that the Plan Commission approves the sign plan submitted by Stephen Ignarski and Karen Gilbertson for Prairie Sign and Lighting on behalf of Mattress Firm for the property at 320 West Town Square Way, subject to conditions 1 through 4 as determined by the Plan Commission. Mr. Mayor.
All right. Commissioner Curl.
I happen to agree with staff. We looked at this building, how it should look on the other elevations. If the sign, I'm not as opposed to the sign as I agree that it doesn't fit like that. It should go over to that element, that stucco, I guess, Carrie? Is that the
Yes.
northwest to
To
the
the
right?
right of where it's
To the right
shown.
of where it's shown.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm not in favor of what's proposed. I like the original design of the building, but not opposed to the sign, just where it's at.
Finished? Commissioner Chandler.
Okay, so the two signs, are they the same size on either side?
No, the proposed sign on the north elevation is larger than the sign proposed on the west elevation.
And the one on the north elevation is not to our standard, is that correct? The size only?
The size is out of proportion with the building, not necessarily out of compliance with any code requirement. It's a matter of proportionality.
Thank you.
Alderman Bekavich.
I like the original version, seeing as the road runs east and west, you have signage on east and west, so if you're heading west, you see the east sign and vice versa on the other side. I don't know if it's necessary to the north. I know it looks pretty good there, but it's out of scale. It takes away from the brick. I like the original design with the post.
I agree with the comments. I like the original stuff, signed proposal that we discussed earlier. Commissioner Curlo.
I agree with you guys completely. I think that the east side, if they put it on the stucco, it will be very close to the one around the corner of it. And so I think that might not necessarily even be needed with the east elevation. Make sense?
So in other words, you would be in favor of having a sign on
I'm
the
sorry.
west, a sign on the
North.
east, but not on the north?
North is what I mean. Yes.
So put up what we're going to, put up our first approved signage. Please.
Now, this wasn't approved signage, this was approved building showing where the possible locations of the signage would be. But again, this was approval of the building and the elements on the building.
Right. The applicant here? Come on up. Name and address for the record?
Steve Ignarski, 11108 42nd Avenue, Pleasant Prairie.
So you've heard the comments of the commission. We worked on that earlier proposal. We liked the earlier proposal. Tell us why you think this makes more sense.
Well, the main traffic is Drexel Avenue, and that's what Mattress Firm is focusing on. To put it on the stucco area, on the northwest side, we're stacking the signs, so Mattress and Firm would have to be stacked. And Mattress Firm doesn't want to do that. They like the sign to be straight in line. And the original drawing showed a swoosh, and that was already omitted from the drawing because it was 15 square feet too large. That's their complaint. They want to see as much traffic exposure as they can.
So you're telling me that the original approved look is not even possible? That's what you're saying? With the swoosh on it?
They dropped that because it was over square footage by 15 square feet.
Okay. Did that logo actually change, or did they just not do it on signage anymore?
They dropped it, the swoosh,
For this project, but it's
For
still
this
their corporate
project.
logo.
because it was over square footage. But they're compromising on that already.
Go ahead.
They're gonna compromise the 15 feet on the swoosh, but then add a whole nother sign?
No, they're not adding a sign.
Well, they're asking for the north sign.
Right. And then if they get the north, then they're going to give up the east. So
I think you'd have a better shot coming back and getting the swooshes approved, but.
Just, now it's off.
I prefer it on the east and west. As I said, that's the traffic flow. People are traveling in those directions, not north and south.
Alderman Guzekowski.
I agree with most everyone else up here. First of all, the proposed elimination of that middle pillar, I disagree with. I feel that the original sign with that swoosh in there would look a little nicer. So, and I am opposed to the north elevation.
Okay. Commissioner Crowell.
So just to clarify that the Mattress Firm wants the Drexel traffic that's heading east-west, so you want the north elevation. They're not concerned about where we think the traffic is within town square. And because of that, and the length of the sign, you're taking the longest space to get it there without the swoosh.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Commissioner Carrillo.
And just confirming that it would be white letters, even though their corporate logo is red.
correct, to be white.
Okay.
Other discussion. Commissioner Johnson.
Are you able to shrink the sign down so it fits to keep the swoosh in there?
That's something that could be done, yeah.
Either sign, either. I prefer them on the east and west, but you could shrink that sign down so that you could get the swoosh in there and keep your corporate logo and still make it look
Right. I don't know what the measurement, the wall length is for the signage area on the east side.
On the earlier item, I talked about how, when you're talking about signage, especially in Drexel Town Square, how it looks is something and how it appeals to the people that drive by or walk by matters. I don't like the sign as proposed. It's boring. I like the original sign. So as Commissioner Corral just indicated, if they could shrink the size and get back to the original look, I think the commission, at least what I'm hearing, would support that. That would be my suggestion. What say you?
So put it back on the east side,
No,
add the swoosh. Well, it was always on the
Go
east
ahead.
side.
It was always on the east, but I think what, Mayor, if you said
Go
the
ahead.
same thing, if we scaled it down, we'd look at the north side if it looked like it fit, more so than it does now. I mean, your big drive is to get on the north side, you give up the east.
Right.
Well,
But-
the way it looks now, it's oversized, it looks bad in that building, so I guess we'd have to see it somehow fit to, close to the original design, and it doesn't.
Like I say, I don't know what the sign ban area is on the east elevation, what the footage is. I don't know how much you would have to reduce it. Now, currently, it's a 34-inch letter. Would it have to go to a 30?
Pete? Quick calculation?
Well, if
Carrie?
I can, the height of the sign is determined by the wall, the maximum height of the floor area. So it's 15% of, I think it was 21 feet to the top of the parapet. So 15% of that 21 feet would be your maximum letter height. Without going into calculations, I would assume that it would be roughly the same size as on the west elevation.
Okay. Commissioner Chandler?
Okay, I need clarity on where the signs are, because in our packet, it says north and west, and now we're talking about it east, the east side. Which locations?
The proposal is to have it on the west and the north. The original building approval showed signage on the west and the east. The staff recommendation is to maintain that original approval and have signs on the west and east. But alternately, if the Plan Commission feels that a sign on the north side is appropriate, then the staff recommendation is to drop the sign on the east and scale the sign down on the north so that it fits appropriately on the stucco or northwest portion of the north elevation.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dickman?
After listening to everyone here and talking about the different things that we're, expecting there, do we have to approve it this evening? I know it sounds corny, but sometimes you go back and you lay out, exactly what the sign would be based on the comments that we presented here this evening. And I think you'd have a lot better chance of having agreement up here on what has to be done.
Very messy process here, and not that they're all supposed to be smooth and easy, but it's hard to visualize. You're talking about changing and shrinking signs and moving them around in the building without being able to see that. We have to think about it in our head, and it doesn't make it easy.
I think the original sign is a yellow swoosh with the mattress firm.
Mm-hmm. And almost everybody up here, maybe everybody up here likes that version of the sign versus what I'm seeing in front of me.
Okay.
Again, we're at the time of the year where you're not going to be putting the sign up, right away. I'd like to have you take a look at it along, with the planning department and come back to us with a firm proposal that meets everything you've heard us talk tonight.
Is 2 weeks going to kill your schedule?
No, generally, usually the lead time is 4 to 5 weeks to manufacture the sign. And then you add permits into it.
If it was me, I would recommend you come back with a cleaned up proposal so that we can all just look at it and
And agree with,
we've told you what we thought. I mean, that
Right.
seems to make more sense.
Okay.
hold off for 2 weeks. I
Mayor?
appreciate it.
Commissioner Corral.
Right now, the north side that we're concerned about shows 39, almost 40-inch letters on the firm part of it, which, based on quick calculations by Carrie, is oversized. Maybe that's why it looks oversized. So I would just go back with the understanding that if we're going to try and get something on the north side, we kind of like the swoosh, but it's going to have to be shrunk and fit the building better. Because today, as proposed, I don't think it would pass.
And our staff is more than willing to,
The east side.
No, I mean, the east side is something you talk about giving up. I personally, I can't speak for anyone else, I think that I understand that they want that north side and we're kind of discouraging that, but if you're going to get it on the north side, it's not going to be that size
Right, size matters. Like it's all size.
on the north.
That's what's Mattress Firm. They're gonna say, they go by inches. So if the wall is 30 feet, they'll make a 29-inch letter just to get the maximum amount of size. So if they're gonna reduce it by 6 inches, I can only bring that to the table, but I think they're gonna decline it.
Okay. I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure you understood where we're,
Right.
thank you.
Commissioner Johnson?
I think they need to look at it because, at least in my opinion, I'm not in favor of changing the north elevation of the building for an ugly sign. That's my opinion. So, two options should be discussed when you come back.
Commissioner Carrillo?
That's what I was going to say, that we're not going to alter that building, or I would not vote to alter the building to put that sign in there. I would suggest that you do the east and west and have the same size, so it keeps the continuity, one on both sides of the building. That's what I would love to see, whether it has the swoosh or not. I don't hate these white letters, but that is completely up to the client.
So I could come back with maybe 2 drawings
Work with staff
with a swoosh
and then come back. Yeah.
and without.
Take the comments that we gave you, work with your client, work with staff.
Okay,
All right, I appreciate it.
thank you.
Thank you.
Will you also be working with the staff to discuss that pillar? Is that going to be kept in or left out?
That's going to be part of their
Okay.
proposal.
Thank you.
Okay? So that'll be item to be held, and we'll bring it back at a future meeting. All right, thank you. Item 4, or 5D rather, is a rezone request submitted by Kelvin Schrader, South Shore Group LLC, to rezone the property located at 7518 South Howell Avenue from RD1, two-family residential, to B4, highway business, tax key number 781-9993-000. Carrie?
Plan commissioners may recall that this was also the area where we talked about a comprehensive plan amendment to change the comprehensive plan identified future use from planned industrial to planned business. That was actually recommended for approval and approved by council on January 5th, 2016. As was mentioned in that staff report, the existing zoning in the area is diverse, includes business districts, manufacturing, a combination PUD for business and manufacturing, residential, institutional, and park. So the proposed site plan that was part of the comprehensive plan amendment is also shown here as part of their rezone request. Nothing has changed at this point. It's just a concept plan, but it's showing you what the multi-tenant building that could possibly go on this parcel would be. Staff supports the requested change of zoning, but there are several concerns that were noted with regard to the site plan. One is that there's no water or sewer currently servicing this property, so that's something for the applicant to consider. And also the proposed configuration of the driveways, that may be, it might cause some conflict. So those are things that the applicant should consider as they prepare site plans moving forward if the rezone is recommended for approval. The staff recommendation is that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the property at 7518 South Howell Avenue be rezoned from RD1 two-family residential to B4 highway business after a public hearing. Mr. Mayor.
So looking at the map up there, or the drawing, do you, are they sharing a driveway with the Sikh temple?
No,
So it's just adjacent to it?
right.
Is there a strip in there somewhere of green space, or?
It's just not shown on here exactly where the Sikh temple driveways are. I think there's some space in between both.
Okay. Comments from the commission? I didn't see which one. Let's see. Mr. Seipert.
This, yeah. It's on, I see it, okay. What type of businesses that they're proposing for this property?
Well, one of them would be occupied by the person who is proposing this and also purchasing the land, and that's Kelvin Schrader. So one of them would be a jewelry store. In the proposal for the comprehensive plan amendment, the possible tenants for this multi-tenant building would be related to the bridal industry, is what they said. So maybe such things as, I'm not sure, planners, florists, wedding dress makers, those kinds of things, whatever's related to a wedding.
You get your diamond ring and your wedding dress, one-stop shopping.
The tenants haven't been identified, the tenant space hasn't been programmed yet, but at least one of the tenant spaces would be Mr. Schrader's jewelry store.
Commissioner Chandler.
Is the applicant here? I just wanted to get your feedback on planning's concerns.
Name and address for the record.
My name is Eric Hyam, 17855 Bermuda Boulevard, Brookfield, Wisconsin.
One dealing with no water and sewer. Are you aware of that concern?
Yes, we are. Yeah, we've got that figured into the cost of the project.
Oh, so that has
well,
been
we've already
taken care
worked
of
with,
and shared?
The sewer and water people bringing the water up from Manitoba, the sewer, is the closest proximity to it. So we are aware of that. And then the other question you had was the division between the properties.
Yeah.
There's always, I'm going to say, I'm just spitballing here, but about 20-foot difference between the existing driveway, and we would not exceed beyond the current driveway that's on the property. And then changes of thought would probably, it would be more of a directional driveway anyway. So the southmost entrance would just be an in, and the northmost would be an out. So we'd have a flow that way. So you wouldn't have a duplicate. There's no crossover traffic, there's no cross-cut there, and none is being sought or required.
Okay.
So Carrie, does that address planning's concerns?
Well, the concerns weren't necessarily planning's concerns, and this request is just for a rezone of the property. So these concerns would actually be addressed when the plans were being developed. So in other words, after the step for the rezone, they would be going forward and addressing these concerns in their plans for the next step, which would be site plan approval.
Thank you.
Alderman Bekavich.
Carrie kind of just stole my thunder there, but given what the question is about the rezoning from residential to business, it makes perfect sense on Howell Avenue. So given the question tonight on the rezone, I am fine with that. The rest of it can be worked out when the building is proposed and site plans come through.
All right, Alderman Guzikowski.
Just a quick question, and maybe Carrie, I see that, I realize the program has not been set yet for this site for either tenant, but I noticed that there's a future drive-through mapped out on here. Is that from, if you look at it would be the north end of the...
Right. I think that was left in there from a couple of conversations that staff had with the applicant's representative. There's no plan at this point for a drive-through. They were just showing where a drive-through could be. If a drive-through is proposed at such time in the future, they would need to come back for conditional use review. We would handle it then.
Or they could use it as, you get your wedding ring, you get your dress, and you stay right in your car. You don't even need to go in, right?
If I may, the land has been, an offer's been made on the land. The purchase is contingent on getting the zoning. If it's not favorable zoning, they're not going to go through with the purchase. So that's really as far into the plan as we've really dived. We put the drive-through in there as a concept, just, we're going to work with the city on what you guys think is going to work best there. As we do on all our projects, we'll work hand in hand with any question or concern you may have.
Thank you.
All right, zoning's in front of us tonight. Motion?
Crowell moves that the commission recommends the common council that the property at 7518 South Howell Avenue be rezoned from RD1 to family residential to B4 highway business after a public hearing.
Dickman seconds.
I'll take that as Guzikowski seconds. Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Scafidi, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Crowell, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
And last item tonight is 5E. It's a review of a certified survey map submitted by the Oak Creek Franklin Joint School District for the properties at 8640 South Howell Avenue and 340 East Putes Road. Tax key numbers 827-9014-001 and 827-9026-001. Carrie.
The item on for this review is actually to combine all those properties. The former site of the City Hall Library, current site of the community center, and the current site of the high school. Proposed CSM shows that division, or that combination. Easements are currently shown on there. However, there is an easement affecting South Knights Place that should be clarified. Prior to the meeting, we had had a discussion with Ms. Kathy Kramer from the school district and with Brian Johnson, the assistant city engineer. We believe that those clarifications are something that everybody understands now. Also, there may be another easement agreement that would have to come into play here. I'm going to ask Brian to help me out with an additional condition of approval. The staff recommendation is that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the certified survey map for the properties at 8640 South Howell Avenue and 340 East Putes Avenue, or Putes Road, excuse me, be approved subject to conditions 1, 2, and a proposed third that Brian will help me out with.
Okay. Applicants are here. Our buildings are down. I saw that last weekend. First time that space has been clear in 50-some years. Questions from the commission? Mr. Johnston.
Since I'm thrown in here, the additional easement is when the Knights Place was vacated in 2012, there's language in there that the easement shall remain in place for all the structures underground. The main easement that is going to be needed is for a public water main that runs north and south on Knights Place, and just defining that easement. And we will have a separate document, so that'd be item 3 for the conditions of approval, that a separate water main easement and exhibit is to be created for Knights Place. Yeah, it's just clearing up some technicalities.
Okay, thank you. Any other, Alderman Bekavich?
Just a comment, this certified survey map is just the first step in getting the school board what they need to commence construction on that site. So I really don't see any hangups with this at all, other than what Brian mentioned, getting that other easement in.
Okay, anything else? Motion.
Johnson will make a motion that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the certified survey map for the properties at 8640 South Howell Avenue and 340 East Putes Road be approved with the following conditions. 1, that all technical corrections are made prior to the recording. 2, that all easements are shown on the map prior to recording. And 3, that a separate water main exhibit and easement is created for the public water main on Knights Place.
Guzikowski, a second.
Roll call.
Hickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Scafidi, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Curl eye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
All right, go forward. Motion to adjourn.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Hickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Scafidi, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Curl eye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Have a great night. We'll see you next Tuesday.